It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Beanie Yo 200? 200? 200? Day in that neighborhood. My brothers and sisters, we are on Reaction Beanie Yo 200, y'all. Now, I've been doing this YouTube shit for a year. Was last month in February. That made it a year since I started doing these YouTube videos and shit. Whatever. But to just think about that we on Reaction Beanie Yo 200, y'all, I'm just like, damn, where did the time go? Like, time flies, man. And all I can say is, man, I appreciate y'all for being here, bro. I hope y'all keep being here. I hope y'all stay here and just keep fucking with me. And I hope our family, our crowd, our channel gets even bigger. Because we on the road to 300 now. And it is so fitting, y'all, for Reaction Beanie Yo 200 that we go back to the man, the myth, the legend, MrBallen. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am. MrBallen on a good Saturday. And the title of the video, the most claustrophobic tragedy, anxiety warning. I ain't gonna lie, y'all, like, and when he say claustrophobic tragedy, I'm thinking like wherever they at, they got trapped somewhere where they couldn't move, they couldn't see shit, and they end up dying. And that's just one of my worst fears, man. I got a lot of worst fears about dying, but this on the list too. This is definitely on the list. I don't know what MrBallen go on with this story, but I'm excited to find out. But before we find out, my people, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you might need. Get what you need. Reaction Beanie Yo 200, and we back to MrBallen once again. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all got what y'all need. Y'all ready to go? Then let's fucking go.
Today's story is going to be physically uncomfortable to listen to. And at the end of the story, I'm going to show you a video that is highly distressing. So viewer discretion is advised. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please encourage the like button to join the official MrBallen Discord server, but secretly manipulate their account so that no matter how engaged they are on the server, they can't level up. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay.
Hold on, y'all. I gotta make sure I got some shit right, man. I gotta make sure I got this right. Okay. No, okay, yeah. I had to turn the volume all the way up. Well, we good. Let's go.
Okay, let's get into today's story. At 4 a.m. on February 25th, 2022, a 36-year-old father of three named Christopher Boudram woke up inside of his modest home in Pointe-à-Pierre, which is a city on the Caribbean island of Trinidad and Tobago. After quietly getting out of his bed so as not to wake up his wife, who was still asleep, Christopher walked into the other room and did his typical morning exercise routine, and then afterward, he made himself some breakfast in the kitchen, and by 5:30 a.m., he was out his front door, into his car, making the commute to work. Christopher was a professional scuba diver, and he had been for over 10 years. Commercial diving is a very broad field to work in, but generally it meant that Christopher was paid to do various tasks underwater, things like inspections or welding or just moving equipment around. For the last 8 months, Christopher had been fortunate enough to be working for a company that was located just 2 minutes drive from his house. It was an oil and gas company called Perea Fuel. And Christopher's duties at Perea Fuel centered primarily on the upkeep and maintenance of several of these underwater pipelines that Perea Fuel used to get the oil off of their ships and onto land where it could be processed. These underwater pipelines, of which Perea had at least 6, were basically U-shaped. They had these 2 vertical sections on either end that would jut out of the water. And then connecting these 2 vertical sections was a 1,200-foot long section of pipe that ran along the seabed at roughly 60 feet below the surface. And so one of these vertical sections was out at sea, so 1,200 feet off the coast, and ships would literally come by this opening to the pipe that was out of the water, and they would dump their oil into this opening. The oil would go down, it would shoot across this long horizontal section, and then go up the other vertical section much closer to shore, where workers could collect the oil and bring it onto land to be processed. So on this particular day in February...
Why I feel like Christopher ass gonna get stuck down the damn pipe, y'all. That's just my, we gotta come up with our theories of what gonna happen now. And that's my first one. That man some kind of goddamn way gonna fall down up in the damn thing and get stuck. But let's see.
February of 2022, when Christopher arrived at Perea Fuel, he was not surprised at all to find out that he and his diving colleagues would be doing some maintenance on one of these underwater pipelines. However, there was something unique about the particular pipeline they'd be working on. It was called berth number 6, and unlike the rest of Perea Fuel's underwater oil transport pipelines, this one had not been active since 2018. So for the past 4 years, it had just sat idle. Now, this was on purpose. For whatever reason, the company had decided not to use berth number 6, and so they put it into a sort of storage mode, where the vertical section of berth number 6 that was out at sea was untouched. It was still just poking out of the water, no changes. However, the other vertical section of berth number 6 that was closest to shore was first plugged up, like imagine putting a cork inside of a wine bottle. That's basically what they did to this vertical section, except they used this huge inflatable cork. Imagine like a huge pool toy. They basically jammed it inside of the vertical section, and then they inflated it so much that it was completely airtight inside of this pipe. And then, once it was all plugged up, they submerged this section of the vertical pipe underwater, maybe 5 or 10 feet below the surface, to kind of keep it out of the way of all the ships that would be moving around close to shore. And then also what they did is they put something called a habitat on top of the opening of this now submerged vertical section of berth number 6. To understand it, you got to picture something else. Okay, so imagine you're in the bathtub and you have a bucket. And you flip it upside down above the surface, so there's nothing inside of the bucket, and you just take the bucket and push it straight down into the water. No matter how deep you push that bucket, as long as you don't rotate it to one side or the other and you just keep it steady, that air pocket inside of the bucket will remain. You can literally reach your hand under the bucket underwater and it will be dry. And so basically that's what this habitat was. Perea Fuel took a huge bucket, if you will, and they lowered it straight into the water and pressed it down and anchored it right above the opening to this submerged vertical section. So there was a permanent air pocket over the opening to this pipe. And the reason for this is because if they needed to do work on this pipe, like for example, today they wanted Christopher and his colleagues to make this pipe active again, which meant doing work on it, the divers could swim down, get inside of this habitat, stand on the little metal platform they put in there, and then they could take off all of their cumbersome diving equipment and just work on the pipe while breathing air. It was really
MrBallen doing a great job of explaining what the hell all this shit is, and I get exactly what he's saying. They put some shit, first they close it up, then they put some shit over it so the divers can go underwater, then come back up top where they can be breathing air and it's dry and they can do their damn work. You know what I'm saying? Their feet probably still dangling in the water, but their upper body is out of the water. I understand all that. And like I said, y'all, I believe this man goddamn fell up into the shit and got trapped some type of way. I mean, this what this got to be. But the thing I got to say more than anything, I guarantee you it's going to be crazier than that. I mean, you already know how MrBallen is. It's going to be some crazy shit with this video. Let's go.
kind of a luxury. And so after Christopher and the 4 other divers he'd be with that day got their instructions, to get berth number 6 active again, they began getting all their gear together and going over who would be responsible for what once they got down to the habitat. And then once they were all ready, they made their way out to the boat. The 4 other divers that Christopher would be working with that day were men he had worked with many times before and men he would consider his friends. Their names were Kazim Ali Jr., Yusuf Henry, Faisal Kurban, and Rishi Nagasar. Once their boat had moved just off the coast and had stopped kind of roughly over the area where below the surface was this submerged berth number 6 vertical pipe and the habitat, the divers hopped off the boat and they swam straight down. They went up and under the side of this habitat wall and they entered into this breathable airspace right around the entrance to this pipe. And so they climbed up onto the platform, they took off all of their gear, and then once they were just in their wetsuits, they got to work. Now, the job was relatively straightforward. They just needed to basically pull a lever inside of the pipe that would then deflate the big inflatable plug that had been set inside of this pipe to seal it. However, when one of the divers reached down and began to pull on the lever, it was jammed, and so they needed a wrench to kind of free the lever. And so Kazim volunteered to go back to the surface and get a wrench because no one had one inside of the habitat. And so Kazim put his dive gear back on, he dove out from underneath this habitat, swam back to the surface, he talked to the folks on the boat, they handed him a wrench, and then he swam right back down, back inside of the habitat, and then once he poked himself back up, he handed the wrench up to the nearest diver. And that diver took the wrench, he turned back around to face the pipe, he reached down inside, and he began fiddling with the lever, and eventually he freed it. However, the second this lever was activated, something horrific happened inside of that space. This is not a normal...
Here come MrBallen with his commercials, but y'all, I just was saying it. You think MrBallen's stores are so simple. You think you got it figured out. What the hell happened once they let the damn whatever the name of it is, when they do use the wrench to let the out? Here come the crazy shit. Here it come. And y'all fuck with MrBallen commercial too, man. Hey, go to the Discord, y'all. Y'all fuck with Discord. Make sure you go to MrBallen Discord. No lie. Great people over there. Let's go.
We don't know exactly how this happened or what exactly could have been done to prevent it, but in short, the second that lever was activated, it began to deflate this big cork that had been plugging up this inactive pipeline for the past 4 years. And when that happened, it broke the seal, and suddenly all this low pressure air that was sitting in 1,200 feet of pipeline made contact with the extremely high pressure air that was inside of this habitat. And air likes to go from high pressure to low pressure. And so the second that seal was broken, the high pressure air in the habitat expanded down into the pipe. But this happened so quickly. It was almost instantaneous. It was almost like the pipe opening became the world's strongest vacuum, and it sucked everything inside of the habitat, all the air, all the equipment, all 5 men into the pipe, and it also began sucking in seawater. Basically everything was going in this pipe. And so these 5 men, they don't have their scuba gear on, went from just standing outside the pipe to feet first flying into this pipe with all of their heavy equipment all around them and there's seawater all over them. They're holding their breath, and so they get sucked down the vertical section, they turn the corner, and they get rocketed out to sea. They are on the 1,200 foot long section, the horizontal section, just blazing a trail. Now think about this. All 5 of these guys have no idea what's happened. They're on a breath hold. They are shooting down a pipe. They can't see anything. The space inside of this pipe is so narrow. It's 2.5 feet across. And so they're getting compressed. Their shoulders can barely fit inside of this pipe. And so you gotta figure that all of them are expecting to die. But eventually, the pressure in this pipe did equalize, at which point this vacuum phenomenon stopped up at the habitat, and actually the habitat kind of refilled with air. And when that happened, all the seawater that was getting pulled into this pipe also stopped. So no more air, no more seawater is going into this pipe. It's kind of like whatever went into the pipe, that's what's down there. And when this equalization happened, these men, who by this point are on a several minute long breath hold, they eventually begin to slow down and come to a stop. And by some miracle, they came to stop in a section of this horizontal pipe that was not totally flat to the seabed. It was slightly elevated, which meant there was a small air pocket where they stopped.
Wow.
And so they come to a stop and they just start gasping for air, and then they begin yelling out to each other, and they realize all 5 of them are alive, and they're all kind of roughly grouped together in this air pocket. And we know this because one of their cameras on their bodies was rolling when they were pulled into the pipe. And so we can't see anything because it's pitch black inside of this pipe, but we can hear them talking to each other once everything stops. And so over the course of this kind of chaotic initial volley of communication up and down the pipe, where again, these guys are on their backs, they can't move at all. They're completely kind of trapped in position. And even though they're in an air pocket, there is water kind of close to their face. And so they have this little area to breathe in. They're panicking, they're screaming at each other. But in this volley, they're able to figure out that Christopher was the closest to the way they had come into the pipe, meaning his head was closest to the vertical section closest to shore, and all 4 other men were right below him. And so Christopher knew if they were going to get out, their best chance was to backtrack, head towards the way they came in, which meant Christopher would have to lead them. And so Christopher kind of found it within himself. Again, we can hear him on audio, and he told the others to calm down and link their feet onto the person below them's shoulders. And so to do that, the only way these guys could move in this tight little pipe is just by pushing with their heels. And so painfully, slowly, these guys were very badly battered at this point. I mean, they came flying in here surrounded by all their heavy equipment crashing into them. Guys had broken bones. They were really badly beat up, but they finally make their way until they're all linked, feet under each other's shoulders. And then Christopher, in the lead, began kind of going in reverse, inching their way up the pipe back towards the way they came in. Now, the reason they felt strongly that they needed to act right away and not wait for rescue is because they didn't really understand how this had even happened. They didn't know if at any moment more water was going to pour into this pipe. They also understood that there was limited air, and at some point they would suffocate. And so with that in mind, they begin this journey. And right away, Christopher reaches the first flooded section of the pipe. Now, you have to understand, they have no idea how long this flooded section of pipe is. And so once you start moving into this flooded section behind you, once you go underwater, you're either going to find another air pocket at some point, or you're going to drown. And so it would...
I just got to say real quick, y'all. I pray that these dudes survived, man. I hope they made it through this shit. I did not know it was going to be a group of people in this claustrophobic tragedy. I thought it was just one person. And even if just one person survived, I hope we get some survivors. I hope we get some kind of feel-good story out of this, MrBallen. This shit crazy.
Turn out that only Christopher and the guy right below him, Faisal, were willing and physically able to attempt this potential suicide mission. And so the others, they began panicking. The others who were not going to go, and they're screaming out for Christopher and Faisal not to leave them. You can hear it on audio. But Christopher and Faisal, they felt strongly that somebody has to go to the surface and get help. And so Christopher and Faisal, linked together, begin inching into this flooded section of pipe. Pitch black. They have no idea what's going to happen. They're slowly going under the water, and they just begin inching their way on a breath hold. And by some miracle, this first flooded section they entered into was not very long. And so both Christopher and Faisal were able to barely, coughing and gagging, get out the other side into yet another air pocket. And by an even bigger miracle, in that new air pocket Christopher, above him, he managed to get one hand above his head, he felt scuba tanks, 2 of them, and he was able to take one of them and somehow force it past the side of his body down to Faisal. And so both men suddenly had an air tank. Now they had to kind of awkwardly pin the tank above their head. These tanks are not light. If you've not scuba dived, it's like pushing a pretty heavy weight. And they had the regulator, so the mouthpiece that actually gives you the air in their mouths, but they couldn't really hold the mouthpiece in place. It was this very awkward thing they were going to do, but this meant they could now enter much longer flooded sections of pipe and potentially make it out the other side. And so, with their air tanks on top of their heads and their mouthpieces in their mouth, gripping down as hard as they can with their teeth, they continued to inch along with their heels, and they entered into more and more of these flooded sections of pipe. As they're doing this, they know they have a scuba tank, but they have no idea how much air is in these tanks. They can't see the gauge. And so it's kind of the same thing as going in on a breath hold. You don't know when you're going to run out of air because you don't know how long these flooded sections are. So you can only imagine how terrifying this must have been. But they kept on going, and finally, after hours of this, that Christopher and Faisal are going through these terrifying stretches of, hoping they can hold on to that mouthpiece and hoping they got enough air. They'd get through these flooded sections, hit the next air pocket. After hours of doing that, they reach this air pocket where Faisal starts to kind of lose it. And he starts yelling to Christopher in the total dark to stop, but he didn't have a reason, and Christopher could kind of sense that, Faisal is starting to lose it and we're running out of time here. And Christopher, he can hear the other divers that they had left behind in the beginning screaming out all the way back down the pipe. And so Christopher, he stayed composed and he tried to get Faisal to calm down and come with him. But when it was clear he wasn't going to, he told Faisal that, hey, I'm going to keep going alone then. I'm going to get us help and I'll be back for you. And so Faisal, he was still panicking and he yelled at Christopher not to go any further, but Christopher knew he had to go. And so with the sound of his friends screaming out for him to stop, Christopher again cinched down with his teeth on the mouthpiece, continued to push this air tank above his head, and he inched his way closer and closer to the entrance of this pipe. And after reaching a very long underwater section where he knows he's running out of air, his tank hit the kink in the pipe where it went vertical again, which meant right above him was the exit. The habitat is right up there. And so Christopher was able to kind of turn and swim up this vertical section until he popped up. And it was again another air pocket, except the water level in this vertical section was not close enough to the exit of the pipe to actually pull himself out. It was like Christopher was stuck at the bottom of a well, like there's nothing he can do. But luckily there was a chain that was dangling down in arm's reach. And so Christopher grabbed the chain and just had to wait, having no idea if anybody was coming to get them. But eventually 2 rescue divers did get into the habitat and they reached down and they pulled Christopher out of the pipe and they saved him. And when they brought him up to the surface, Christopher saw that Perea Fuel had their emergency response team on site. The Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard was there, and it's clear they're getting ready to do some sort of rescue operation. And so Christopher, who's totally traumatized, he's badly hurt, he still ran up to authorities and told them, all 4 of my colleagues are still alive. I heard them banging in the pipes. I know they're in air pockets. You gotta go back down. You gotta save them. But ultimately, the authorities decided it was not safe to send rescuers down into this.
Say what? Say what? Say what, MrBallen? They not gonna go down there and get them men, man. Y'all got air tanks. Y'all got whatever. You got the equipment. What is the damn problem? If Christopher can make it back to the top of that shit with no air tank, he had half of one, you know what I'm saying? He had to use it in a crazy way, and he made it through some of that parts by just holding his breath. But y'all telling me a group of y'all professionals can't go down here and get these people? I done got mad. I done got pissed. Let's go.
Pipe. And so when Christopher found out they were not going to try to rescue his friends who are literally banging the pipe, he can hear them, he tried to jump back in the water to do it himself. And they stopped him. And then Christopher was rushed to the hospital where once he was admitted to the intensive care unit, he tried to check himself out to go back to the water to save his friends. But again, Christopher was stopped. For 2 whole days after Christopher was rescued from this pipe, his colleagues, the 4 other divers, remained trapped in the most claustrophobic, horrible situation imaginable, and they continued to bang on the pipe and make noises that could be heard on the surface, but nobody did anything. And so finally, on February 27th, the noises stopped inside of the pipe, because all of the men died. They either died of suffocation because they ran out of air in the pipe, or they died from one of their injuries, or they attempted to do one of those long underwater sections of pipe on a breath hold because they didn't have scuba tanks, and they drowned. On February 28th, 3 of the divers' bodies were recovered, and the final body, the 4th diver, was recovered on March 3rd. It's unclear why Christopher and the other divers did not do something to equalize the pressure inside of the habitat and inside of this pipe before undoing the plug, because this vacuum effect, which is known as delta P, is actually easy to anticipate and relatively easy to prevent. But the investigation into exactly what happened and who is to blame is still ongoing. However, the only survivor, Christopher, and many other people who are following this case, they believe the 4 deaths are directly attributable to Perea Fuel, who were primarily responsible for not allowing a rescue operation to happen in those first 2 days, where you could clearly hear the sounds of these divers banging on the pipe. And so to finish this story, I'm going to show you the final footage taken by one of the divers, Kazim, who was the one who got the wrench and brought it back inside the habitat, handed it off, and then that wrench was used to push the lever, which created the vacuum. You'll see in this video that it looks like nothing is going on, and Kazim is just inside of this habitat and all the divers are fine, and then it's like his camera just turns black. What's happening there is he was pulled so quickly into the pipe that it looks like it was a cut of the camera, when in reality, that's just how fast everything inside of that habitat was pulled into the pipe. This video is highly distressing. Viewer discretion is advised.
MrBallen ain't lying, bro. That shit was instantaneous. Dude, they got sucked down that bitch before they can even fucking, like, you can even, what? Bruh. That shit look as quick as like a camera flash. How fast they went down that damn pipe. I gotta see that again. I'm sorry, y'all. Let's take that back. That is so fast, bro.
So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's video and you haven't done this already,
I don't know, like, bro, man, dude, I'm damn near at a loss for word with do with y'all as far as just the shit that them dudes went through, man. Like, For days they was trapped down there in this 2.5 foot space. Can't move, can't do nothing. You in water. You don't know if you finna drown. You injured like a motherfucker. Got broken bones and shit. You banging on the pipe. And the damn, who was that? The police, the scuba divers, whoever, the government, whoever the fuck they was, bro. That's some bullshit, bro. They supposed to got them folks up out of there, man. I'm mad as fuck about that. But the thing that happened, y'all, the thing I can't say that happened, that I said earlier that I wanted to happen, I wanted at least somebody to survive. And Christopher survived, man. And it is sad that possibly all of them could have survived if they would have just kept going. But that was just their decision. They ain't want to keep going. That make it even more sad. They trusted that rescue was coming, but come to find out, rescue was like it's too dangerous for us to come save you. Think about that for a second. Think about that, bro. Oh my God, yeah, that shit fucked up, man. All they family should be millionaires now. And money don't bring back them, and it don't really make it better like that. But I'm just saying, sue the shit out of their ass and get y'all papers, man. Get y'all money, man. At least they families can live a lot better. You know what I'm saying? With that money. You know, it don't help shit, but in a way it do. Y'all get what I'm saying, man. All those families should get plenty of money, bro. They could have went down there and helped them folks. I was mad for a second. Now I'm getting sad about the situation. Lord have mercy, man. I told y'all, man, MrBallen, every fucking time, I thought it was gonna be some simple shit like a man just fell in the damn thing and then he just got trapped and he died. No, it was a group of men from, first of all, then when they was going up, then 3 of them said we're gonna stay back at this one air pocket. Then 2 of them kept going. They found scuba gear. Then 1 of them, he didn't want to go no more. So Christopher, he just kept going by himself, and he made it to the top. And I thought that he was gonna, when he made it to survive, I thought he was gonna come back down. Well, not him, but the authorities, the rescue people gonna come down to save everybody else. And their ass ain't fucking save nobody, bro. I'm done, my people. I appreciate y'all, man. I'm finna get up out of here, man. Reaction Beanie, yo, 200, man. Hope y'all come back for 201. And hope you hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and do all that good shit right there. And until I see y'all again, my friends, I got a couple of more things to say. Love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.